Chili here with Water Expands Upon Cooling, Season 2, dedicated to the missing people. And this is episode 2 regarding the case of Heimanut Kasau. And I don't normally look at that level of detail regarding the day and the time of someone going missing, simply because I look at the bigger tendencies that were at the time. The very particular case of Heimanut Kasau has to do with a religious debate that can have to do with the second coming of Christ being a woman or a BIPOC woman, and in that case, a child. And this is why, because I have the hour, I did not find the birth date of Heimanut, um, but because I did have the hour, then I take a look at the hour and immediately I see Chiron ingressing into conjoining Rahu. Chiron ingressing into conjoining Rahu, and this means a fated wound. 17 degrees has to do with the story of Isis and Osiris, directly to do with Black Moon Lilith and the woman that would not subjugate herself to the man. Okay, Isis saved Osiris. He was cut into 14 pieces, and then and his penis was missing. And to have a baby with him, she had to bring back together all the pieces. She gave birth, and then, Osiris, I think, died. And um, as we can see, it's a story of occult and cloning. It's basically clone of the dead. By the way, when there are sperm taken out from men before they're going to war, is so that the wife can get pregnant from their sperm if something happens to them. And we've had several cases like that in Israel when women did that. This is evolutional type. Cloning farms are unfortunately way less benefic, but the story of clone of the dead to do with Isis and Osiris is given a very challenging connotation to me. The first coming of Christ was Christ being born into a supposed virgin. There was a religious debate. Um, Now, I'm not going to get into speculations, okay, regarding um, what Heimanut Kasau went or didn't go through, because I think that doesn't serve um, the emotional charge discussing such a thing where that would be a delineation, a very calculated and based delineation, but that would but the emotional charge, I think, is not worth mentioning. That it is important to note that the topics of the desire to normalize pedophilia, preserve the child brides, and the notion that a second coming of Christ is highly unlikely to not be an indigenous woman and very likely BIPOC. So, and the fact that the Ethiopians did not hide the Book of Enoch. This all brings Heimanut here, which is religious faith, to position that there was a big debate, a big religious war about what to do with the child. And I'm not going to get into more detail regarding that. I'm just saying that because this emotionally charged topic and the understanding that we cannot keep the woman as a child bride when we talk about the second coming of Christ is extremely charged. And in that atmosphere, the world is not ready to where, why, and how was Heimanut Kassau kidnapped. Okay? Both Mars and Saturn on degree 9. Completion year of the moon. This was planned since her birth. And when I say planned since her birth, I don't mean by the family, okay? Coffee. Thank you. Café, toda. Um, my mom as I talk about the moon. So, um, yes, the moon in the 12th house, going over Black Moon Lilith, which is so associated with the myth of Isis and Osiris. Um, they can be, there was a religious war about an attempt to still subjugate. And in what way did it come into practice, or what did Heimanut go through or is going through? I'm not going to get into those type of delineations because I think the emotional charge is not worth it. I did mention the details that are more important, that like if they trigger people, fine, because this is more important because this is necessary to understand the context around which Heimanut Kassau was kidnapped, and the reason that the world is not ready to understand what happened here. The difference between the Marc Dutroux affairs and the case of Heimanut Kassau is the notion of the context of the second coming of Christ being a BIPOC woman and the desire that this would be a girl that would give birth to. Okay? There I said it, because in religions where they try to normalize something that was normal, that 12, 13 years old at the age of Heimanut are basically wed, which still happens with boys in secret societies. Okay? And this big religious war with a child that whose name is literally religious faith is actually at the juncture around the reasons behind the kidnapping. It was orchestrated so that the missing footage would be seen. Okay, full moon. One could not hide her going missing. The delay around that is Saturn here, but it's also Orthodox in religion. The connotation to the Book of Enoch and Anunnakis and the cloning project. Chiron now is only approaching. We go from Isis and Osiris, which is clones of the dead, to 22 conjoining Aries. Is basically we are forced to tend to the cloning project. This happens in Israel. And this is also why they tried to silence this case, knowing that they couldn't. They wanted to control the way they mythicize the disappearance of Heimanut Kassau. They wanted to control the myth, okay? Pluto, Neptune, the approaching of the perfection of the sextile, of the bisextile with Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, is the attempt to control the way the myth is revolutionizing and evolving. Okay, the desire to control the myth, to use the myth to manifest power. But Uranus will be conjoining Sedna. They cannot hide anymore. Sedna is about the story of basically extortion cult, of a father that sold his daughter to trafficking to gain supposedly mythical power, where the disappearance of his daughter going dead, basically affected marine life, and and eventually his dead daughter had more power than him because they had to appease Sedna. If that I spoke today about the oil companies. um, so these are two episodes about Heimanut Kassau. Not only do I have one but two episodes, and this is naturally not an episode that is going to monetization, so I used the very picture that prompted me pressing record. If anybody has objection, they can write me. And this is Enoch. How do they spell it? Is that Enoch? Hmm. Um, okay, I don't. This is not an all rights reserved episode. Okay, and this is important. As long as people don't try to twist things, then I just post it as a premiere episode right now. I don't have the rights for the picture. If anybody has problems with that, they can write me and I can change the picture. It's not for monetization. And again, the reason I have two episodes on Heimanut is simply because I could not ignore this Chiron ingressing, the Isis and Osiris story, and all the things that are showing up. And again, it's important to understand, without knowing these things, we don't have the ability to address missing people cases. Okay, Neptune related cases, whether it's cold cases with Neptune, which is Neptune. Okay, Neptune basically means water expansive on cooling, or whether it is missing people cases, without understanding those type of esoterics that are not shared with the wide public. And I had to go to sources where, okay, an ex-parliament member of the Tweede Kamer in Netherlands, um, Anneke Lucas, Sven Kool, uh, and so on and so forth. I knew about the Book of Enoch because of the spiritual community, people like Gigi Young and so on. Um, but without this type of context, and of course, I had to adjust the astrology. I innovated a lot in astrology to adapt it to solve these type of cases. Okay, this is not an astrology that is taught in any school. I mean, most of it is, but when I adapt to the cloning project, and when I adapt to the bloodlines, and when I adapt to the wound around the bloodline, okay, those things are adaptations that I had to innovate on the science of astrology and adapt it to the study case. This is all not monetized. Okay. Um, it's done for one reason only. I do feel that we have something bigger than the Dutroux case here. And I feel that this information has to be shared so that we can address the kidnapping of Heimanut. And if there are any such similar cases, okay, Neptune in Pisces can have a religious connotation to the kidnapping, a religious reasoning behind that. Okay, this is the difference where Neptune ingressed into Aquarius, and that was a different, it was a world politics, also religious, um, business, and so on. But here is the religious component with Neptune in Jupiter signs. So that is important because it's the religious component of the reasoning behind cloning. And again, this is not something that is taught at schools. Okay, it's something that you have to dig the web to study. A lot of people are resisting that, but we won't be able to have an actual anything without that. Astrology will stop being credible. Psychology will stop being credible. Medicine, people no longer believe in the doctor. So either we address the difficult things to address, either somebody does that, although it does move, and when Uranus was with Aries, exactly on the degrees where Heimanut was kidnapped, I was doing my first, and although it does move, and predicting a lot of the stuff that I'm addressing right now. Not with the kidnapping, but definitely with the training and the sciences and the scientific revolution and the connection to what I now call sexual sovereignty and the occult and the esoterics and the mind control. Um, so, yes, and without that, we will not be able to solve the case of Heimanut Kassau. Mind you, the case for Peter Cheort was 2-3 decades because it was connected to the extortion cults that need children. Okay? And they thought it was his brother, and his brother committed suicide as a teenager because he was accused of raping and murdering his brother. Now, I'm not going to go into more things regarding religious satanic abuse. Um, Definitely not. I'm not going to make the connection to Peter Cheort. in those things. It's not that I don't think about such connections. it's that the emotional charge, I think, is not worth addressing that in detail. I could be wrong about that, but because both him and his brother are no longer with us, then I think that there are so many cases of survivors and so many cases of people that died. Then if there's something I'm missing and somebody thinks that it's worth mentioning these type of connotations, then be my guest. I don't, I'm disagreeable. So, with the case of Heimanut, for example, she has a sister. Somebody invaded the house of the sister, and that was a family member. Again, they tried to make it a small case of family member and connect that to Heimanut. Heimanut was kidnapped in Safat. The other girl was in Beersheba. Okay, it is 300, I think, kilometers apart in a small country. Okay, so Israel is a tiny country. It's not a ride back home. It's something that is a significant distance. And whether something happened from the family or not, it's not the family. Okay, that's Isis and Osiris, a cloning project, Heimanut and the connection to the Anunnaki. Okay, it's not just the family, is what I'm saying. There's something way more global here. I'm not saying they didn't have infiltration through families. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying if you look at one banking elite family and not at the others, you wouldn't know about the Sassoons. And if you wouldn't know about the Sassoons, then you know nothing about the opiate crisis. And that's kind of important to know because the Rothschilds were the little less successful brother of the Sassoons. But on that, I think we have the financial historian that does a way better job explaining that than me. And this is what I mean when I say I don't mean the family, because it's not that there cannot be some skeletons in the lineage. It's that to address the topic of extortion cults, we cannot address one family. Um, and if we're talking Europe, then some people say it's the Wallenbergs. I don't know. Is it Rothschild saying it's the Wallenbergs and Wallenberg saying it's the Rothschilds? Go figure. But we won't be able to know what happened to Heimanut Kassau, let alone return Heimanut Kassau, or even begin to conceptualize what would be a safe setting for Heimanut Kassau to return to. Okay, the big important thing about the sister or the family member there was also a child, is it safe for the missing to return to the family, but also if she was kidnapped from a welfare center, then we have to deal with both questions, and those are really big issues alongside the religious conflict. Okay, second coming of Christ, a lot of esoteric excitement, and a shit ton of people that want the new Christ to be actually a Messiah that gave uh, birth to a prophet being a virgin, and if she can be 12 or 9, why not? Then that's quite a difficult context.